So starting with the basics, we're looking at a universal 10% import duty on all goods coming into the United States paired with targeted sector-specific tariffs, such as the 25% levied on steel and aluminum. The administration's justification seems centered on promoting domestic production and addressing trade imbalances, but these measures aren't without their costs.
Right, and that 25% isn't just on raw steel and aluminum anymore. It's also slapping the same rate on canned beer and empty aluminum cans. I mean, talk about hitting everyday consumers. That adds up real fast on shelves.
Exactly. And the ripple effects of such tariffs extend into sectors you wouldn't immediately expect. But one of the more controversial moves has to be the revocation of the de minimis exemption for low-value shipments from China. Previously, purchases under a certain threshold would bypass duties, but now...
Now, that's gone. And man, look, this hits small businesses hard. They'll have to pay duties on every little thing. Think about those craft shops sourcing parts online, or tech startups trying to prototype. It's like cutting off a supply line in the middle of an op.
It's a significant policy shift, no doubt. The administration claims it's aimed at combating issues like synthetic opioid shipments, linking this to national security. Still, the broader economic consequences are hard to ignore. And then there's the outlier in all this, right?
You mean Norfolk Island? Yeah, I've been scratching my head there. A 29% tariff? On what? They don't even export to us. It's like deploying troops to a desert with no enemy in sight.
It underscores a fascinating disconnect. The island's administrator explicitly stated they have no trade flow with the US, yet they're being hit with one of the higher rates. It raises questions about the strategic intent behind some of these measures, or if they're simply miscalculations.
Or maybe it's just collateral damage. In any case, these tariffs aren't playing around. They're shaking up everything from policy to practicalities. People are feeling this. Consumers, businesses, even trading partners.
And it's just the beginning. The way these policies are influencing the global economy, especially with countries like China and Canada already making moves, this is turning into a high-stakes chess match. And speaking of this high-stakes chess match, the retaliation to these tariffs has been swift and multifaceted. China, for instance, has imposed 15% tariffs on certain US agricultural goods and 10% on others. On top of that, they've suspended lumber imports and revoked some soybean licenses for American companies. For an economy as interconnected as ours, that's a considerable blow.
Yeah, and you know who's feeling that? Farmers. They're taking the brunt of this. And it's not just a ripple. It's a direct hit. Losing exports to a market like China? That's like cutting off air to a diving team mid-mission.
It certainly highlights how deeply intertwined these relationships are. Then there's Canada. They've implemented tariffs covering $20.8 billion worth of American goods, ranging from food products to industrial equipment. And they haven't held back on voicing their discontent.
Oh yeah, and get this. Canada's Prime Minister even called it an economic gut punch. Those are strong words. And with their 25% tariffs on U.S. goods, they're putting their money, or their sanctions, where their mouth is.
It's worth noting how these actions are shaping broader trade alliances. Take the European Union. They've announced countermeasures worth $22.5 billion, targeting American products like steel and even threatening a staggering 200% tariff on alcohol. That's no small escalation.
200%? They're not messing around. That's the kind of hike that hits breweries, distilleries, real jobs, real livelihoods. And let's not forget, this is hurting our allies, not just adversaries.
Exactly. And let's talk about the secondary tariffs aimed at nations trading with sanctioned countries like Venezuela. It's a new tactic but raises critical questions. What are the long-term repercussions for global trade alliances?
It's like lighting a fuse in an ammo depot, honestly. Countries are going to react, and not all of it's going to be clean. Retaliation escalates tension, and before you know it, we're in a full-blown economic face-off.
And the waves are already spreading. Economists are warning of slower global growth, and confidence in trade stability is hitting new lows.
Which is exactly what makes this a game-changer.
As we step back to evaluate, it becomes clear why these tariffs are being called a game-changer. Through a SWOT analysis, we can uncover their intended strengths, like boosting US manufacturing and driving innovation. But at the same time, the looming threats, retaliation, inflation, and trade instability are already rippling across the global economy.
Yeah, and those strengths, they're kind of like a double-edged sword. Sure, domestic production could see a bump, but it's coming with a heavy price tag. Higher costs are rippling straight down to consumers and hitting supply chains hard.
Exactly. Then, with the MOST framework, you see the administration's mission focuses heavily on reshaping trade dynamics to favor the US, even as these goals intersect with broader strategies, like countering perceived geopolitical adversaries. It's a bold, high-stakes approach.
Or just charging in without enough backup. You pin everything on tariffs and hope for the best. But strategy-wise, you got to consider, well, when these big plays backfire, you're left scrambling with collateral damage.
Which brings us to PESTEL. Politically and economically, these tariffs strain alliances and raise crucial concerns about global stability. Socially, there's a divide too. Some see this as a stand for economic nationalism, but others criticize the impacts on everyday life.
And it doesn't end there. On the tech and environmental fronts, you're looking at impacts that weren't even on the radar when these tariffs rolled out. Delays in tech imports? Happens. Carbon footprint changes? Another wild card.
True. Finally, with SPEAR, the geopolitical leverage these tariffs aim to create does shift trade dynamics. But it also tests the goodwill of trading partners, including strategic allies. And ultimately, there's no consensus on whether this gamble will pay off long term.
Exactly. This isn't just some policy experiment. It's reshaping markets and relationships worldwide. And I mean worldwide.
Right. So, the question becomes, do the benefits of these measures outweigh the costs? Economists are debating over potential inflation spikes. Industries fear long-term harm more than short-term progress. It's a precarious balancing act.
No doubt about it. One thing's sure, this isn't a story that ends here. The ripple effects, they're just starting to spread. This whole landscape is still unfolding.
And on that note, that's all for today. The tariff landscape is intricate, and the conversations around it will only evolve. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, keep questioning, folks. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay sharp out there.